Hey everyone. In this particular lecture, we're going to be talking about project stakeholders. So we're going to cover what a stakeholder is, how and why to identify them, as well as give you some tips on how you can assign responsibilities to stakeholders to help ensure that they know what's going on and what their role is throughout the project. All companies have individuals or groups who are directly or indirectly affected by activities and projects done by that company, and those people are called stakeholders. Stakeholders have an interest or are involved in the company's decisions and can both positively and negatively impact their projects. Well, before we jump in, the first step really is to go and identify those stakeholders. We talked at a really high level that stakeholders are people that are affected by projects, either directly or indirectly. But let's dive in a little bit more and learn about the different pieces of what a stakeholder could be. So what is a stakeholder? Number one is your project team members. So the project manager, the business analyst, any IT folks that are engaged, any other business folks that are engaged in the project, those people are definitely stakeholders for that project, and those are the most obvious ones. The next people are customers. So anybody that's a customer of this particular project, this could be both internal or external customers. Anybody that's going to be, that maybe is the end user, or that is going to be receiving the output or putting in input into the particular project. Next is suppliers. So if you have anybody that's supplying you certain things, if this is a new system, there may be changes that are going to affect them. They have to put their orders in a different way, or there's different maybe there's different service level agreements that you have with them as to how quickly their orders will be put in, or net terms, or anything like that. So suppliers are also a common stakeholder. The fourth most common category is employees. People that it's going to kind of point to right away are executive, right? Management, the president, the vice president, the CEO, the CFO. Those are all people that are going to be influencers within the project because they're making the decisions for the company. But this could also include any employees that are interacting with this particular project, in this case, a system, and people that are maybe not even directly interacting with the system, but they have to reference the data that's put in the system. That's all legitimate stakeholders as part of the project. Another common one is the city or community. So if your project has some type of outward facing piece to it, the city or the community could be affected by it. If your project is to create a new library for the city, well, yeah, that the city and the community are going to be affected, so they should have input as to how this project's going to go, where that library is built, what type of features it has, and what are the key things that they're going to utilize it for to ensure that as you complete that project, it's deemed successful by all stakeholders, including the city and the community. The next one is professional organizations. This could include government. This could include unions. So any type of organization that could have either influence into the project. If you have unions, if you have employees that are in those unions, they're going to be influencers of that project. The union helps influence the employees as to what their decisions are and the way they're going to lean on certain pieces. Being able to understand what professional organizations are stakeholders. Another example of professional organizations is, like I mentioned, the government. If you have something that's dealing with food or drugs, the FDA could be engaged, and they could be an influencer. So if you're creating a project to create some new vaccine, well, you're going to have to go through some different professional organizational steps, government or other entities that have to approve your work, and so they are definitely stakeholders within that project. And the last two are a little bit more vague. Any individual that's impacted by the project, and any individual that's going to be supporting the project. So impacted is, obviously, if we would build a library, anybody that would be impacted. So if we have to tear down a house to put the library there, well, that house is tore down, that owns that land, they're going to be impacted. So they need to be a stakeholder in the project. And then the supporting piece, if you have a support team or an IT team, or maybe designers or whatever, they're going to support the project after the fact. They need to be involved early on as well, so they can have influence and state their opinions as to how that project goes. That's what a stakeholder is. Why do you identify stakeholders? Again, we went at a really high level and we said, hey, it increases the chances of success on a project. But that's really vague. Let's dig a little bit more into it. So the more stakeholders you have, obviously the additional ideas you have, more minds are going to create more ideas and more conversation and input. With more input and conversation, you get some additional ideas of ways you can handle certain problems or ways you can avoid potential problems or risks throughout that project. The next one, and I think it's one of the most important ones, is you get varied perspectives. People work with this particular project, this system, this library, whatever you're doing as part of your project, people are going to work with it differently. If it's a system, those end users that are utilizing it are going to work with that system differently than the management level, and they're going to work with that system differently than the executives. They're going to work different with the system compared to maybe customers that have a web interface that are working with the system. So you get varied perspectives as to all these different people that can work with the system. After success, gaining buy-in is the next most important reason you identify stakeholders. By gaining buy-in, you have users that are actually going to adopt the project. They're actually going to utilize it. They're going to be excited about it. If they don't have buy-in, if they don't have skin in the game, they're a lot more apt to oppose whatever you're doing. Change is hard. Change is difficult. But when you can make change that benefits the majority of the stakeholders or all the stakeholders, it's going to be a lot easier to sell them on the idea that this project is really there for them and it's being built for them. And the last reason you identify stakeholders is to increase credibility. When you involve many different stakeholders and you're getting all these opinions from all these different people, the outside perspective is going to be, wow, they really care. They really care about what people think. They really care about how they're affecting people, and they really are doing their research to ensure there's minimal impact in being able to get from the as-is process or the as-is system or wherever everything's at today to the to-be process or the to-be system. So it increases your credibility with everyone, both internal and external stakeholders, as well as anybody that's just viewing the project. So how do you go about identifying stakeholders? The first way that I always do it is I just walk through the anticipated scope and the process. I do this as a solo exercise for myself. So I'm sitting down, I've already got my project charter that's kind of explaining what this project is doing, and I'm just walking through what I'm imagining, how I imagine this project to unfold, and what are the steps that I'm expecting to have in this to-be process or in this end result of the project. And as I walk through, I'm thinking about, okay, who's going to benefit from the effort? Those are definitely stakeholders. So that could be employees, that could be customers, that could be the government agencies, it could be cities and community, it could pretty much be anybody. So I'm going to think about, okay, who's going to benefit from this project? Second one is, who's directly involved with the people that are going to benefit? So maybe they're managers or other people that are directly engaged with people that are going to benefit. The third way is jobs that could be affected by that project or results. So they may not be beneficiaries of the project, but that project may change a process or how they work with things or how they work with people or where they go to work. And so you need to make sure that you have them included as stakeholders as well. The fourth one, government officials. That kind of goes with the organizations, and you have to walk through and understand, okay, what are the different government agencies and officials that are going to be involved based on those organizations we've identified. Any influencers, so this is going to be the CEO, the president, the vice president, the board, anything like that, where they're the people that are ultimately making the decisions for the company, and regardless of what that system or project's doing, they're going to be influencers. They get to make that decision. They're ultimately the ones that are putting up the funding potentially to move the project forward, so those are the ones I'm going to list. And then the last but not least is interest in outcome. So these are the people that are interested in how this is going to play out. And so this one could be the city and the community. In our previous example where I talked about where maybe our project is to build a library. And so they're interested in the outcome of where it's going to be placed and what it's going to look like and the features and benefits it's going to have. Once I've done that and I've done kind of my solo walkthrough, the next thing that I do is I bring my project team together. and I share. Here's all the kind of the stakeholders that I have. Let's brainstorm additional stakeholders. So sometimes I'll put those stakeholders up on the board that I've identified prior to it, or make just a quick little cheat sheet on a notebook or on a PowerPoint slide that I'll share with the project team. Other times I don't share that information, so it's really project by project. But really the whole point is I'm bringing the project team together, or a subset of that project team together, to help identify those stakeholders and maybe come up with some that I've missed in my initial brainstorm. Once you've done the solo brainstorm and the team brainstorm, the last step that I like to do is those stakeholders that you've identified, you probably have 80 to 95, maybe if you're great, 100% of those stakeholders. But what I like to do then is I like to go to all of those identified stakeholders, tell them a little bit about the project, what we're doing, and then ask them who else could be a stakeholder project, who else could be affected by what we're doing in this project. Those stakeholders, they're more engaged in what they do, and they know with the people and the groups that they work with who is going to be affected by the project. And by doing that, you're able to uncover areas, people, groups where you normally wouldn't even have gone and asked any questions, gotten any requirements from them, because you maybe didn't even know that they were going to be involved. And so by asking identified stakeholders who additional stakeholders are, you can uncover areas that you weren't even going to go to, and you have one of those uh-oh moments right at the end of a project.